We are rolling up on the 1-year anniversary of the release of the last Dragon Age game. The Veilguard has been dead and buried as a game itself. Like, it received its final update, I think, at the beginning of the year, not too much longer after that. But yeah, nobody's playing the game. At time of recording has 590 players, 1,100 people played it over this past weekend. And according to Jason Schreier on the game's launch weekend, Halloween 2024, Get Woe could go straight to the charts with 89,000 concurrent players. And then he'd end up having, in the coming months, EA even admits that, yeah, they got 1.5 million players and, shit just really underperformed. But hey, it's great, right? And for all intents and purposes, it's done. Like Dragon Age, we will never see it again. BioWare probably will not exist long enough to release whatever is going to happen with Mass Effect 5. But they just can't let it go. Mark Darrah tells a Mass Effect devs to scapegoat Dragon Age of the Veilguard to defend itself against EA. Throw the game that they know that failed, okay? Even though this is the same idiot that was out there washing for Veilguard saying that, oh, EA sabotaged it. Now you're trying to tell the people that, the 6 people still working at BioWare to go ahead and throw Veilguard under the bus. The franchise that apparently, according to him as well, BioWare didn't treat fairly to Mass Effect. Like, what are we doing? BioWare veteran Mark Darrah shares his advice to developers working on Mass Effect 5. Make a good game, right the wrongs that Andromeda presented back in 2017. As the studio goes all in on the sci-fi series, the advice relates to BioWare's fraught relationship with EA, something Darrah had to navigate for years. Surprisingly, his advice is to scapegoat the Veilguard. Great. Darrah, who is a consultant on the Veilguard, says that the Mass Effect team could use the game's failure, or at least in the eyes of EA. No. It was a failure, confirmed time and time again, to get the resources and freedom it needs for its own game. Right. Because some of the other, weapons grade cope around the Veilguard was, EA meddled too much by wanting to make it live service. And that was also something that they would say in one of the earnings reports that, it failed because, EA doesn't monetize their games well enough. It doesn't have enough live service elements. That's why Veilguard failed. Okay. But also, that was a game that was in development for the better part of a fucking decade and cost an uncountable and an immeasurable amount of money. But just say, we don't want to do, or we don't want to have happen to us what happened to Veilguard, so just let us make our own game. No. We've seen what happened when BioWare had the ability to make their own game. They made the Veilguard. He urges the developers to do this, even if scapegoating isn't quite accurate, since it could help EA eventually listen to the devs. This guy's an idiot, man. This comes from Mark Darrah's interview with YouTuber Mr. Matty Plays. Okay, here Darrah reflects on the current state of BioWare, and then shares his optimism about Mass Effect 5's development even after the Veilguard's failure. I do think this is less messy. Well, yeah, because they've been working on fucking 5, at least it was announced in some form or fashion, all the way back in 2018? Shit, I do not anticipate this being good. I'm a huge fan of the original trilogy. I've talked about it before. Andromeda made me quit gaming for years. That shit was so fucking bad. And I thought, well, if this is what games are going to be moving forward, I'll just, find something better to do with my time. And outside of, a brief aberration to come back and play Final Fantasy VII Remake in 2020 and then followed that up with Kingdom Hearts 3, like, I'd been checked out of gaming for 7 years. Andromeda was the straw that broke the camel's back. But yes, to be frank, the Mass Effect team is going to be able to point to the Veilguard and say we should steer away from some of these things because look what happened. As much as that stinks, why? Especially, this is the gamer after all. Right, they love the Veilguard for very obvious reasons, especially for the devs that worked hard to turn the Veilguard into something that could be shipped after EA kept interfering with its development. Again, this is why just Mark framing it as, no, scapegoat the Veilguard, but then the glazing from the gamer, none of it ends up making a lot of sense. It's just, if they would have released a proper Dragon Age game, we could have been having a much different discussion, because apparently BioWare wanted to, either in the lead up to Veilguard, to refresh everybody's memories, because God, what Inquisition came out in 2018, 2019 or something like that, but a considerable amount of time had elapsed between Dragon Age releases, so they wanted to do kind of like what happened with Mass Effect's Legacy or Legendary Edition. I think that's what it's called. They remastered the trilogy and, put it back out there. But they wanted to do that for Dragon Age, but EA wouldn't fund it. Interesting. Almost like they realized that, we kind of got a sunk cost fallacy, and if you want to do anything else with this franchise, fucking prove your worth with Veilguard. and then maybe we'll talk, because it's just something that is so fundamentally different from what you're doing by trying to set up false expectations with, Origins 2 and Inquisition. You're setting yourself up for an even bigger fall. But all right. So Dragon Age, like Mass Effect, didn't have the best time when its most recent title released. In October of 2024, BioWare and Electronic Arts dropped Dragon Age: The Veilguard, which wasn't well received by audiences, much like 17's Yes, Andromeda. However, Mass Effect has an advantage over Dragon Age in that the series boasts a Trilogy remaster. Yes, the Legendary Edition, I was right. Former BioWare executive, producer of more than 20 years, Mark Darrah, explained what's up. He departed BioWare in 2022 after spending 24 years rising through the ranks of the company. He saw some of the most popular games of certain eras go out the doors of BioWare, including the Mass Effect quadrilogy. Well, okay, if you're talking about popular games and profitable games, the Mass Effect trilogy, every Dragon Age game, Jade Empire, Knights of the Old Republic, list goes on and on. So in a recent interview with Mr. Matty Plays, very, very informative interview you did there, Matt. Darrah got onto the topic of Dragon Age Trilogy Remaster, not a remake, in the vein of the Legendary Edition for Mass Effect, explaining why it probably won't ever be a ting. I honestly think they should do. I don't think they will, but I think they should do a remaster for the first three. One of the things we pitched at one point pretty softly was a retroactively rebrand the first three games as if they were a trilogy and called it the Champions Trilogy. Oh yeah, okay, so you were the ones who were trying to segment and push that off to the side as something different from what you're doing with the Veilguard. Interesting. Maybe you do that, and as a first step, you take these three games and maybe Veilguard, and you shine them up. Really need to shine up Veilguard, huh? And re-release them, probably remaster and not a remake. See what happens, and then maybe you go from there. Yeah, exactly. There's some quality of life improvements that you could need for, the first couple of Dragon Age games. Inquisition is still modern enough at this point in time, but like proper controller support for Origins, I don't think that's included. But yeah, no, like doing a remaster, that would totally make sense. That's a low investment, high return proposition for sure. Darrah highlighted the stark similarities between the states of Mass Effect franchise and Dragon Age franchise. Well, yeah, exactly. And they both weren't at that position upon the conclusion of both trilogy, but well, whatever. But admitted that the latter is much harder to remaster than the former. Not only that, but there's no money coming from EA to support the idea. EA said publicly they're kind of against remasters. Interesting. Really? Okay. I don't really know why. It's strange for a publicly traded company to seem to be against free money, but they seem to be against it, so that's part of it. The other problem is that Dragon Age is harder than a Mass Effect to do. One of the earliest things was, let's do Frostbite tools, and then let's find a mod house, and that seems talented, and just uplift them and pay them to do a remake for Dragon Age Origins. That's where a lot of pitches were around it, and when we can bring in Dragon Age Origins forward. The studios ruin their financials within themselves, I think, to some degree. EA's stance was, sure, go ahead and do it, but do it with the money you already have. Oh, interesting. So they weren't going to pay over the top for this vanity project. I knew that there was more to this because, Origins requires, quite a bit of work to bring up to modern sensibilities. And you could have done it if you would have budgeted better. But at this point in time, like I said, when it was first pitched, Dragon Age the Dreadwolf had been in development, I think, even before the release of Inquisition, so you wasted way too much money. You could have got that trilogy made if you guys weren't such unbelievable hacks. But hey, there's a reason that BioWare, everybody can remember, and by the time that this studio gets shut down, we will all reminisce about our favorite BioWare games because there is a lot to choose from. This was at one point in time a hallowed studio that when you heard that they were working on something, you would legitimately get excited for it. But now they're on the brink of collapse. We don't know if Mass Effect 5 is ever going to come out, and if it does, I pray to God somebody else gets it across the finish line, because everything that I've seen out of this studio in its most recent releases lets me know that they aren't just unfit for working on Dragon Age, they also aren't just unfit to work on Mass Effect, they're just unfit to do gaming. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.